if they wondered, that would be the Israelites who obeyed God but suffered alongside their fellow nationals, the Israelite people, makes you wonder if they wondered what the sense of following God was if you were just going to suffer for what everyone else does anyhow. You guys get the question. Okay, if you're faithful to God, but the people around you aren't, often you will suffer, and indeed the Bible presents this truth, you will suffer alongside of them. Consider our nation. As our nation turns more and more away from God, there is a sense that we are ripe for judgment as a nation. And when those things occur, and they will occur because you reap what you sow as a person, as a family, as a nation, you will reap what you sow. Those things will touch us. The question really deals with the heart of that. Why should we suffer as people that obey God and follow him just because those around us, by and large, don't? So that's the question in a nutshell. 2 Peter chapter 2 helps us to answer this. It reminds us of this truth about God. 2 Peter chapter 2, you're already there because I told you to get there, but I didn't turn there yet. Give me a second. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved for judgment. Of course, that's alluding to Genesis 6. I don't want to go too deep there. And he did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. So God knows how to set aside Noah, who was faithful. He understood his need for grace, even as he judged the entire world, all the rest, except for those 8. And here's another example Peter would give us. In verse 6, turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, those corrupt men and women that lived there, turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them to destruction, making them an example of those who afterward would live ungodly. And at the same time, out of Sodom and Gomorrah, just like Noah was preserved, he was godly and he was preserved, out of Sodom and Gomorrah God delivered righteous, verse 7, Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked, for that righteous man dwelling among them tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing. It's kind of gross, actually, if you think about it. You consider Sodom and Gomorrah, what was going on. By seeing and hearing their lawless deeds, then, here's Peter's point, the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment. God knows how to deliver the godly out of judgment and at the same time to reserve the unjust under that punishment in the day of judgment. It's clear, Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 18, that a man is not judged by the sins of another man. My son is not judged by God for my sins. The soul that sins, in Ezekiel, shall die. That's what God said through Ezekiel. The soul that sins shall die. It's not as if I do something wrong that my son is condemned by God or judged by God for those things that I do, or vice versa. But we are all called to turn and live. We're not held accountable for other people's choices. That should be obvious. And an obvious reading of those two places, we learn that, and we can trust in that. But here's kind of the interesting thing for me. Is suffering bad? What was accomplished on the cross by Christ's suffering but the salvation of the world? And there are things in our own lives that will be accomplished and on the behalf of others that only can be accomplished in suffering. Well, first, obviously, the building of our character, the development of us, that God would perfect us and change us and grow us through things that are difficult, even things that we are suffering unjustly. We did no wrong, and yet we suffer. And the Bible speaks of this very clearly. If you go back just one book from 2 Peter to 1 Peter, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 19. As believers, we do not suffer pointlessly. There is a point and a reason and a hope in our suffering. There is something to be gained by experiencing suffering, even if we haven't done anything wrong. And Peter would make this point. Chapter 2, 1 Peter, verse 19. For this is commendable if because of conscience toward God one endures grief, notice this, suffering wrongfully. For what credit is it when you are beaten for your faults, you take it patiently? If you do wrong and you suffer for it, that's not commendable. But when you do good and suffer, if you take it patiently, this is commendable before God. For to this, notice this, guys, if you're a believer, for to this you were what? For to this you were called. This is actually our calling, to suffer alongside who? Christ. That we would know the fellowship of his sufferings. Something is gained in suffering. There is temporary suffering in this world, even things you don't deserve, and they have a weight of eternal glory. And we don't fully understand and see how valuable those hard things that we'll experience are. No suffering is pointless for the believer. But there are many, many times when we will suffer along with the ungodly. But that suffering for us is temporal. It's not eternal. And for them, unless they turn and live, they're suffering here and forever. And we could rightly say, this is as close to hell as I'll ever get, right? But this world is not perfect. There will be tribulation for the godly in this world, and we have to face that fact. It is difficult to understand why God would allow really hard things to happen to really wonderful and faithful people. But the Bible tells the story of that. It's like every story, right? From David to Daniel to Joshua to Jeremiah, right? Through to Jesus. He's obviously the greatest example. For to this you were called, because Christ, verse 21, also suffered for us. You're suffering for a reason, leaving us an example that you should follow in his steps, who committed no sin. That would be God's intention, that we wouldn't suffer because we've done stupid things, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who when he was reviled did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. And so can't we do the same? When we are reviled, what is our privilege and our honor? When we're hated, when we're slandered, when people talk bad about us, what is our privilege and honor? As a Christian, we can follow the example of who? Christ. That's what Christian means, little Christ. We follow in his footsteps. He was reviled and did not revile in return. He was beaten and did not turn around and threaten. You know what he said when they put the nails through his wrists? He looked up at the people doing it and said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. No one had ever seen anything like that before. And it was so compelling, just not to make a study out of this, but who did it change? It changed one of the criminals that was next to him, who realized as the day went on that there was no one like this, and indeed he was the King of the Jews, the Son of God. And he said, hey, you're up there suffering. You've done nothing wrong, but we deserve what's happening to us. Remember me when you enter into your kingdom. And Jesus said, today you will be with me in paradise. Did his suffering gain fruit? It won somebody into eternity. And I think the way that we suffer, and Joey, even just, to draw attention, that's not like a just, unjust, right? It's just a health thing. The way that we suffer, when people see God's comfort as we go through incredibly hard things, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, they see God's comfort in our lives, his consolation. It can actually, if you read 1 Corinthians 2 closely, you can see that sometimes people are saved because they're watching you go through something hard. And you're not doing it perfectly, but you're doing it so differently than the world around you. They suffer and they curse. They shake their fist at heaven. But we look up to our Redeemer who suffered and will walk us through those things that we're suffering and teach us at the same time. Praise God for that. Galatians 6:9 tells us not to grow weary in doing good, even if it seems like there's no earthly reward. Nobody notices, nobody cares. For as we do good, guys, think about this, please. Doing what is right is its own reward. Just like loving like God unconditionally, people that don't deserve it, is its own reward. It will make your soul come alive. Withholding love, or only loving conditionally, somebody has to perform or do something for you to love them, they got to be the way you want them to be, destroys the human soul. Doing what is right is its own reward. And as we choose to do what's right, no matter what the earthly consequence is, we can feel and experience the good pleasure of our Father. And there is nothing better than that. It will indeed last forever. It's a tough question, but a good question. And the Bible has much to say about it.